Do you want me to make you co-host?
No, I don't need it today because as long as you can hear Marvin, I don't have anything else to share. So I think we're good. So week 6. So thank you, Marjorie. That was so nice again. And every time I listen and I'm like, perfect again.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
You do such a beautiful job. And there's always like, how is it that you're saying exactly the topic that we're going to talk about? So it's beautiful. Thank you so much. So I always start off to just say thanks everybody for coming. And did anybody have any questions or insights from week 5? We're now into week 6 coming up this Sunday. Nothing. This was because we're still in it, one of the hardest weeks because I love his saying, my thoughts and my feelings are none of my business. And I notice how many times that comes up. It's like to let a thought or a feeling take you away and to sort of go, okay, it's none of my business for just this week. So we're now heading into week 6. And I always say this every week, but I love this week as well. It's day 6, which is humankind. God created humankind in our image, male and female. The 6th step is the bringing forth the ideas after their kind. Let us make humankind in our image, after our likeness. Wisdom is the masculine or the expressive side of being, while love is the feminine or a receptive side of being. And that's by Paul Hasselbeck. This step, you give life to your project and see to it that it is good. By doing the next right thing, it will lead you to the next right thing. This is where, Marjorie, what you said about the next step, this is where it flows so nicely. One suggestion is to follow your nose like a dog, and it will lead you to the next right thing. So I have a special guest. Here she is. I've changed my spot so I could get her in. She follows her nose all the time. And it will lead you to the next right thing. The talk today, Marvin does talk about that, and I love it. Well, I love dogs. And the affirmation for the week is I see to it that it is good. I have a lot from Marvin today, so if everybody's ready to go, I will just start. I have 2 parts. It's on 2 different parts of his talk, and I will start the first one right now.
Our affirmation last week was, I keep my heart in heaven and my hands on earth. I keep centered and grounded. In other words, I do not let my rational functions of thought and feeling get in the way of my perceptions, is the whole idea. We separate out these functions. Now, this week, we want to reintegrate thought and feeling in their correct role in the creative process, which has to do with your thoughts and feelings are the creative functions of your mind. This is how you create. But in order to use the power of your thoughts and feelings, you have to get free from the unnecessary addiction to perceiving life through them. And, you know, you think about your own life and you listen to other people and you see how ubiquitous this habit is. We go around and say, well, I feel that, instead of saying, I see this, we'll say, I feel this or that. I think this or that. First of all, what's the reality in the invisible world of intuition and the visible world of sensation? Then once you have perceived the reality as it is, that's why we mean about keep your heart in heaven, your hands on earth. Keep centered and grounded. Then you can use your creative functions, male and female, thought and feeling, to do something about those situations and change them. And the whole secret to healing yourself. This is the whole secret to getting prosperity, see? But we've got to first get our, as we said last week, get our wiring connected correctly. We have, our wiring is backwards in a lot of ways, okay? And so there's a sort of a reversal here that needs to happen. Again, I'm well aware this is very confusing to people if this is your first exposure to this insight, but where do you think all this stuff comes from anyway? This mystery. This is a mystery, okay? And the power is in the mystery. And I think most people at this stage just sort of stop and say, oh, well, I don't know. I don't know how it happens, but you just sort of close your eyes and hope and believe and something happens. Miracles happen and stuff, but not very often, okay? There's a way of teaching self and practicing the art and the skill of co-creation where you can actually manifest good in your life. So let me go back to some of these things in this first day that have metaphysical significance then. Thought and feeling are the functions we're working with, your male and female attributes of consciousness. God says, let them have dominion over the birds and the fishes. Remember last week, the birds and the fishes represent your intuition and your sensation. Let your thoughts and feelings have dominion over your intuition and your sensation. In other words, let it make something out of them. But it can't do that if you have fallen into the addiction of experiencing reality through your feelings or your thoughts, for that matter. See, that's why it's so important to get this separation done so we can recombine in a way that's functional. So have dominion over, which means this is how you create your life. Now, if you can do this, simple to do, but difficult to understand. I'm going to remind you of that many times because that's the whole secret. People get so caught up in the confusion of this step and the sort of arguing about it in their own mind. And you can't do it. It's impossible to do. This is something that can be learned only by doing. See? That's why you need a real, concrete something to work. God does not function in hypothetical situations. There is no power in it, in other words, in hypothetical situations. So, and then God says, let them have dominion over the birds and the fish, intuition, sensation, and let them be fruitful and multiply. We're going to talk about that in a moment. This is what we call in unity the secondary power of consciousness. You can't do it alone. People sit around and try to heal and try to manifest prosperity and relationships and everything else themselves. You can't do it, see? You've got to get your helpers involved. Your thoughts and feelings can do it for you if you learn how to direct them, guide them, and yes, control them. This is an area where control is not a bad word, okay, because it has to do with your inner kingdom. You have to learn to control your thoughts and your feelings. And the easy part of that is controlling your thoughts. And that's the work of a lifetime, okay? The hard part is controlling your feelings. But we're going to talk a little bit about some ways, hopefully, of seeing that too. And then one more thing that I want to just get to, at least for a little while this week, is this. At the end of each one of these days now, and at the end of day 6, God says, and then God sees that it is good. Here's an important point, okay? God sees that it is good. What does that mean? Is that just there as a way of sort of a conclusion of the daily creative job? God, of course not. God sees that it is good. This does not mean that God pats himself on the back and says, well, I've done a good job. But it means literally, God sees to it that it is good. Now, this is what you need to do this week, particularly with your creative project. You need to see to it that your project is good, that your healing is good, that you're not making yourself worse, that your prosperity is good and lasting and permanent, and not just some, quick, way to make a buck or something like that. You want to see that your relationships are good and honest and authentic and with real people that you see authentically without the illusion of your own projections and neediness and everything else. So it's up to us to, at each one of these stages, and now particularly at stage 6, to take the responsibility of seeing that our creation is good. I'm going to give you an example from this. This is from the book by Robert Pirsig, the guy who wrote the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. You recall that? A big cult item back in the 60s. And he wrote another book that's not as familiar.
Okay, I'm just going to skip ahead to another part. Just
You know, so it certainly isn't that God pre-advanced beings, and they just need a little clarity on what this us is, okay? So say to yourself this week concerning your project, let us create this project in our image and likeness. That is, your thoughts and feelings, male, female, send them forth to multiply and see to it that it is good. Okay? Now, as I said earlier, it's much easier to do this than to think about it. So, and just for a few moments here, I'm going to talk about how you do it, okay? How do you do this? How do you see that it is good? I'm going to read you something here from Carl Jung, the psychologist Carl Jung, where this is from one of his letters where he's writing to somebody who is having trouble figuring out what to do, okay? And I'm sure everybody here is saying, but what do I do this week? What do I do, okay? Here's the advice from Carl Jung in a letter about what to do. He says, he quotes Kierkegaard, Soren Kierkegaard. He says, Kierkegaard says, life can only be understood backwards, but it has to be lived forwards. And that's sort of one of the main theories of existentialism. Okay, that's where existentialism came from, Kierkegaard. But he says, this is the dilemma. Life can be only understood backwards, but it has to be lived forwards. Now, we go around trying to understand life forwards. And that's the source of all of our confusion. Quit it. You can't do it. You can understand it backwards, but you don't need to understand it forwards, okay? You experience it. That's why you need a real project. We're not talking about theory here. God does not work in hypothetical situations, remember? So then Carl Jung writes to his friend, the solution is this, and consider this now, the instruction about what you do this week about your project. Okay, I can't tell you specifically what to do, but I can tell you generally what to do. He says, be simple and always take just the next step. You needn't see it in advance, but you can look backwards afterwards and see it. There is no how to do it of life. Everybody always wants to know how to do something before you do it. It doesn't.
okay. I have one more part. Sorry for the choppiness.
Notice is a good advice for it, but is off analogy, okay? I don't know how far you want to take that, but it's definitely an insight that's worth thinking about this week. So out of that, we say that the practical direction for this 6th step in the creative process this week Simply do the next right thing. Quit trying to think all the way to the end and just do the thing that is right before you, that is the next right thing. But, and here I'll just take another couple minutes to just remind you of this confusion that we also are involved with the understanding of doing that thing. That's it. It sounds simple. Do the next right thing. But we have been trained and fallen into the habit of deciding the next thing logically with our thinking faculty, and even worse, deciding the right thing according to our feelings. And that's how we get in trouble. Now our challenge this week is to reverse that. Last week the challenge was to reverse the functions through which we perceive. Stop perceiving and wasting your thoughts and feelings. Stop living in your feelings, in other words, and living in your heads, and get in touch with being centered and grounded through intuition and sensation. Now, this week, consider this a double reversal, okay? And this is where it gets, I know, complicated. So if you can't stand to think about this, hold your hands over your ears for a minute, okay? Or your head will probably blow up. It rains all over your neighbors. And this week, we're going to try to reverse thinking and feeling. So when we say, do the next right thing, the next thing is not figured out logically. That is given to you by your feelings. If you limit it to just the next thing, your feelings will tell you what is the next thing to do. But then the other of it is the right thing. And the right thing cannot be determined by the present state of your feelings. That is what we call loving with the mind. And so this is, yes, it's a mystery, and it's the deepest teaching of the Eastern religions, okay? Learn to think with the heart and love with the mind. That's what it takes. That's what enlightenment is, okay? The bottom line of Eastern mysticism. Learn to think with the heart and love with the mind. The things we pride ourselves on are our biggest problems. This is and the biggest obstacle to this. Most of us have gotten to some degree familiar with the possibility of thinking from the heart. There's a line of thought that you can tell. It doesn't originate in your head. It bubbles up. If you meditate at all and have worked on that, you know what we're talking about, okay? You have begun to learn to think from the heart. That's what meditation is for. But now, to love with the mind, this is where the power comes in. Because you can't love with the heart. The heart is in you, and it is a form of self-love. You have to get love in mind, because it's the mind that is the connecting link between you and God, and between you and everything else here in the material world. Those people that you're trying to have relationships with. Your money, your mind is your link between you and your money. So you can sit there till the cows come home, loving money in your heart, and you could care less. You've got to figure out and learn how to, and you already know how to do this if you would just stop being stubborn and insisting that you're already doing it. See? That's the trap on this stage. This thing, and this is the biggest obstacle of all, this thing about loving with the heart. I'm about out of time, but I think it's worth just mentioning back to this for a moment from last week. Because remember the point. The point is, see that it is good. And the way that you see that it is good is do the next right thing. But the next part of that is not a logical thing. That comes from the feelings. That's the reversal we're talking about. And the right thing is not according to your feelings. It has to be gotten into the mind because that's the connecting link. That's where the power was in the old days in unity, and that's where it's disappeared in the last few decades, is that people have fallen back into, I mentioned this last Sunday, and I found the quote I had been looking for, and I'm just going to read this, even though I'm a little over time here, but I won't take much. From Ken Wilber, I was talking about what he calls the pre-trans fallacy. And here's in an interview, okay, where he explains what it is. And the person interviewing him is asking him about his relationship and his involvement in this Naropa Institute in Boulder, where he's been involved for many years, that he more or less renowned went away. He's back there somewhat nowadays, but he says it's actually beginning to come along very nicely now. He says for a long time it was sort of lost in the 60s, dominated by a regressive, retro-romantic, re-tribalizing, pre-rational orientation. But recently, and his interviewer says, pre-rational? Ken Wilber says, yes, that means the confusion of feelings with spiritual awareness. And that's where the power goes. That's where the power leaks away. He goes on, talks about unity by name and a lot of other New Age and New Thought movements. And he said, this is why they're all basically Christian Science, everything. This is what always happens. The power goes out of it because of falling into this confusion of feelings with spiritual awareness. Now, and so his interviewer says, you mean spiritual awareness isn't feeling? And Wilber says, no, it's not feelings. It's the awareness of feelings. And that awareness is free of feelings and free of thoughts. See, it's a different thing. And allows both feelings and thoughts to just float by, just as clouds float by in the emptiness of the sky. But if you confuse experiential feelings with that emptiness, then you will confuse emotionalism and sentimentalism with spirituality. And then you're unplugged. Then the work you did last week, was in vain. Even if you accomplished getting plugged in, our assignment last week, grounded and centered, okay? Even if you did make contact with the power, you will lose that this week if you fall back into your feelings instead of using your feelings and thoughts to create with, see? And it's not bad. People are just, this is the part that are addicted to. That's why it's so difficult, okay, and why I'm spending more time on this. Anyway, then you will confuse emotionalism and sentimentalism with spirit. And this is often the first step on a regressive slide into the unending world of your own subjective fascination.
So,
Wow.
It's excellent. It's just amazing. You know, I mean, I know that he has a big foot in Jungian thinking, and you know, he brings in Jungian psychology. Maybe not, he doesn't say so, but you know, this whole thing about thinking and feeling as being only two of the four, and sensation and intuition are the grounding in the power. But yeah, and I'm amazed, but it's very heady. He himself is very heady with, you know, I did what I promised I wouldn't do anymore in my older years. I took notes. I thought, well, no needing to take notes. I know all of this stuff, right? But I just filled out my journal full of Marvin. He really inspires wanting to capture and take notes. Yeah. Go ahead, but Debbie, I just,
No, go, no, that's great. I mean, I did the same thing because I was trying to, I was trying to sort of, and he talks about it as being very confusing. And I'm trying to take it down to say, well, what is he actually saying? But I realized too, as he was talking, was that last week was like a preparation for this week to try to get used to saying, I'm not going to get so attached to every thought I have, every feeling I have. But then how he flips it around this week and he says, well, how do you do it? It's, you do only the next right thing. You see to it that it is good and you don't get carried away. Like I loved even how he brought in what meditation is and, thinking with the mind, no, thinking with the heart and loving with the mind. Even that is like, what? But it's just fantastic. It's just fantastic.
I have something going on right now, but I don't, I know that time is really precious among us. So I want to, before I start telling you my little story, Marjorie, do you want to say something before I take away the time?
No, just I have to re-listen to all that. Yeah.
Okay. I have a beloved dog, very, very, very beloved, and especially so by my husband. And he's coming to the end of his life. And I have been, he's okay in terms of no pain and all that, but he's not eating anymore. And he cannot navigate, and he's blind and deaf, and he's a little dachshund. Anyway, this whole thing has been an emotional roller coaster for us. What to do? In Switzerland, when a dog is at that stage and is not able to walk around anymore very well, they put him to sleep. And my husband, and anyway, so the roller coaster's been on the feeling and the emotional level very strong. And just this morning, I asked for, in my shamanic tradition, I asked for a card to help me navigate, because I'm no good if I'm coming from, I touch his fur and how silky and beautiful, and he's still alive, and I can still feel his pulse. And yet I have to decide to make an appointment. And I wasn't able to, right? I would flip-flop. I was no good to me, and I have to be the one that has to make a decision. So then I got this card from the shamanic tradition, the war bonnet. And it says, you have everything that you need. You have accomplished, you have it in your treasure chest, what you need to move forward. And I thought, I don't know what that means. And then Marvin comes and says, don't ask, just take one step. And then you will start seeing in retrospect where it is leading. It's not in the answers lies not in knowing intellectually ahead. It's right now, take one step, not more. Stay grounded. And clarity will come only in retrospect. At least that's what I wrote down. So anyway, this has been, maybe I hope I told you the story a little bit about how feelings and emotions, even though they are genuinely coming from my heart. I mean, we love this four-legged being, but that's not consciousness. That's not where I want to move from. So this has been a perfect lesson today, I cannot make this decision from feeling or from emotions. All I can do is go into this state taking one step without intellectual analysis, to do what's in front of me. That's another thing I heard him say. Just do what is in front of you. And clarity comes in retrospect, looking back. So anyway, that's my little story for today.
Thank you.
That's so beautiful.
Mm.
And yeah, in the beginning too, which is, so fitting, it's the follow your nose. Like a dog.
Yes. And then that's the only function that he has left. He
Yeah.
doesn't see, he doesn't hear, but he has a very, he's a dachshund, he's a hunter. He has a very good nose, and he navigates going through the house with his nose.
And he's very low to the ground too. He's the little tiny feet, cat legs. Oh. Well, my heart goes out to you.
Mm.
Well, but I've been in the field of emotionalism. I mean, I've been crying. I've been in the field of emotions, about losing him, and the significance he has in our life. And there's another dog here, and they sleep together. They're bonded, and my husband is totally, that's his dog, and yet when I got the war bonnet, which is this strong image of a warrior, grounded, strong, and it said you have acquired or accumulated all that you need to move forward.
Wow.
And then I thought, okay, in the moving forward is my one step at a time, and not ask, is it today or tomorrow, or is this gonna, I even try to get Parker to tell me what I think I should do. Well, that's emotionalism. He's okay. Parker is okay with whatever we do, right?
Mm.
Absolutely. And, and I think the other thing that Marvin said that is so amazing, and you've just said it again too, is that life cannot be understood forward. It can only be understood backwards. You have to live it forward, understand it backwards.
I have to really think about that again, because I think that is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of goes against a lot of our various teachings that are floating around, that you cannot understand your life looking
Can I
forward.
just put in one question? You can think of what I was going to say. Sort of, we rationalize our feelings when it comes to making a decision or going, we sort of rationalize them in thought. And for me, there, the two things get really confused. I'll give myself a certain logic to doing this, but it's really based on feelings.
That's right.
So
And that's
really,
that's where Jung comes in, because he calls, and I think Marvin said it in one of his previous terms, that thinking and feelings are the rational of the four functions of the mind. Thinking and feeling being the rational. Yeah, and that took a long time to really sink in. That.
Yeah, can I just say something, Maya? Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I know we're short. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a stupid little story, but I was in a different kind of quandary completely. It's like I'm going away to France in 2 weeks, and I decided that I wanted to make a little jacket for myself. And this thing has turned into a nightmare and taken up all my time. But I kept pursuing it through a kind of logic, which I realized was false. It was really my emotions, my feelings, that I wanted to be that kind of person when I go away. I want to have this, I want to feel good. Anyway, very confused. And what saved me was something a little bit deeper, where I said, I'm killing myself doing this. And I took the jacket, wrapped it up, put it in a cellophane bag, and put it on a high shelf. Now, I don't know if that decision came from thought, feeling, or something deeper. So I'm just putting it out there to think, and maybe next week you might have some answer for me too, that is a little bit wiser in retrospect. Yeah.
Right.
That's really interesting. Well, I had a similar thing. My daughter is coming. I haven't seen my daughter in a year, and she's coming to Vancouver for the summer, and I'm trying to get everything ready for her to come. And I have little space, so I'm trying to do all this stuff. And last night I was in the storage locker and I was like, oh, and I need extra pillows, and we got to do this, and I was getting so in another state of having to do things and plan things, but I was good at getting ahead of myself, and I was losing the feeling of, oh, she's coming, and the wonderful things, but trying to get prepared to the point of, wait now. And then I just said, I'm going to stop.
And does that relate to what Marvin has been saying today? Can you see a very clear relationship? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to listen to it all again, and maybe I'll also be clearer.
Yeah.
I know I did the right thing, but I'm not quite sure whether that was a thought or feeling or something deeper, an intuition. But thank you for hearing that. And yeah,
And that was maybe only the first step.
Yes.
True.
There might be something next coming about that package up in the closet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have to ask you, Dr. Maya, you're the expert on all this. How do you see the difference between feelings and intuition?
Oh, that's very big. Again, feeling is really a rational function.
Yeah.
And intuition is not. And so it's like with your intuition, you can pick up, you can have dreams, you can have images, you can have perceptions, and they don't fit, or they don't have to fit. They're part of your intuitive function. And some people have a very developed, a lot of Unity folks have a lot of intuition going. They are very developed in that. You know, according to this concept of the four function, you have one primary function from the irrational team and one from the irrational team. So let's say you either a thinker or feeler, and then from the irrational sensation and intuition, you have one function, and one is has a primary function, the other one is secondary. And the idea is this unity wholeness thing that over a lifetime, you learn to be okay with the other functions. That's where the learning is, the shadow. And you learn to make room, you know, like a man. Now, I can't really use my husband, but I have known plenty of men who are primarily thinkers, and they're horrified about feelings. They don't want anything to do with feelings. And you know, like we say, men are crybabies when they have something that hurts. Well, their sense function is so underdeveloped that they don't know what to do. They have a little hurt somewhere and they're running off to the doctor, right? That's a funny example of an underdeveloped. And with women, a lot of women have or they have been given a lot of permission to think that their feeling function is what rules their life. But that makes for a life that's stuck in the past often. And that is, you know, the whole, it's past related and it's victim related and it's the drama. And so then, you know, the intuitive people can be just as nutty. I'm a primary and intuitive person, and I had to learn that intuition, people who are intuitives, they're very fast. They jump from one feeling, from one idea to another, and people get dizzy around intuitives. And often intuitives also don't do the work on their thinking and feeling function to make things concretely work. That's a great idea, you know, but they're not grounded. So anyway, I don't know. Yeah, no, there is.
That's really interesting, because I know that intuition for me, when it happens, there is no thought, there is no feeling that comes up. It just happens. It's so bang on. And I had something happen. What's that?
Sorry, no, I was interrupting. Go ahead.
No, but you described it very good, because it happens, it's usually bang on, but there is nothing that is giving me any warning. I'm not in a feeling state, in a thinking state. Boom, it's just something that comes out of nowhere. Very powerful. But that's
Yeah.
yeah.
It's very powerful. And then you, as a leader, let's say, if you have people who work for you, or if you're in a relationship, you need to be aware that just to say, I have an idea, bang, is going to make sense to the world around you. You're going to have to chunk it down. You have to go make, and first of all, you have to look to make it concrete, taking okay, so I have this idea. You know, I could start a garden. Well, one step only. Let me take one step in that direction.
Yeah.
And let me be guided by what that one step shows me.
Yeah.
And the feeling people, one of the things about the feeling people is because it's a rational function, they feel their feelings are what is. They can be judgmental. They can be very, this is how it is.
And they can also catastrophize.
They can what?
They can also what I call catastrophize. Like go to the worst case
scenario. It's very hard to have a rational conversation with a feeling type about anything that's going on in the world right now, because they know. And it's not, it's just one side of the coin, but they are so grounded in what they feel. They're not easy in that way, you know. And the thinkers are usually men who are so rational, which is also a great hindrance, because rationality is, again, it's not open to the power of the mind, you know, to something what could be new, could be different.
Yeah.
Just what is.
And coming back to you have to, you cannot understand your life forward. You have to live it forward, and then you can understand it backwards. That is just gold.
Yes. I mean, 12 hours. I want to say 12 hours since I put my jacket on the shelf, and I already understand now that I'm out of that whole state. I guess it was intuition that made me say, okay, this is killing you, put it away. Yeah, because there was no other feeling or thinking that would have led me to that, really. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. I have to go, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do too. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you. See you next week.
Bye, Louise.
Bye, Louise.
Bye, Louise.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, see you
Great
next
to see
week.
you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
I'll send out the notes today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.